Hey y'all, happy Friday. This is kind of an impromptu video that I had an idea for this morning after I saw a headline and I wanted to talk about it. If y'all have seen what happened to Taylor Townsend at the US Open, I want to talk about that, right? Because there were some remarks said to her that were clearly racist, anti Black, and the power of solidarity when we see other tennis players, Naomi Osaka, Coco Gauff, come out and voice their support, right, for what Taylor experienced. I think it's a testament to the power that we have when we band together, right, to resist oppressors because we see it on overdrive these days. So if you're here live, thank you so much for joining. My name is Marissa Price. I'm a healing practitioner, creating safe spaces on the internet for Black women to heal from trauma, process what we experience, share resources with each other, connect, right, in safe places. And so that's the purpose of this video. If you're watching, if you're live, welcome. Happy Friday. If you're watching the replay, thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you're interested in content like this in the future. I have been wanting to talk more on trending topics that I see and connecting them to things that I have spoken about on this channel, things like toxic workplaces, workplace trauma, which I talk a lot about, the power that we have when we band together, right? Solidarity, speaking up on behalf of one another. So many people have shared with me through the work I have done helping Black women heal from traumatic work experiences. A lot of the trauma can come from when no one stands up for you, right? When people are seeing what you're experiencing in the workplace or in any situation, and no one stands up, right? No one says anything. No one says that's wrong. That can create another level of trauma. And so the importance of us being able to speak up, to give credence, right, to what we're experiencing, because if not, we can go easily down the path of self-gaslighting. That what we're experiencing isn't real, right? That we're imagining it, that we're thinking too much about it. And so seeing this story this morning just reminded me of the power of solidarity. Again, seeing Naomi Osaka, Coco Gauff stand up on behalf of what Taylor Townsend experienced at the US Open, which we're going to talk about, and saying basically, right, everything that this other tennis player was trying to throw at her is incorrect. And she didn't imagine it, right? And these words specifically levied at a Black woman are meant to have a certain effect. So we're going to be talking about that today. Yes, happy Friday, y'all. I want to check in and see how you're doing if you're here live. There's a lot going on in the world at the moment. I'm working on some back end tasks for my business. I just went live earlier this week to talk about cooperative economics, which I think is really important at this time. A lot of us, I'm seeing like a trend in content creators really talking about we're having to revisit some of the things that we've been told were in the past, right? That we really don't need to pay attention to. So many of us have been steeped in hyper individualism for so long, and we've been told that's the way to go. What we see happening, right? There's really no place for individualism. We have to like come together collectively. We have to engage in solidarity because there are so many forces at play trying to gaslight us, trying to make it seem like what we're experiencing, we're not really experiencing, trying to put the blame on us. So we internalize the shame of what we're experiencing. And so it's so important to look at this collectively, right? And to stand in solidarity with each other as we see what so many of us are navigating, right, collectively right now. So, yes, welcome. So, we're going to be talking about something that happened at the US Open that's about more than just tennis. It's about how Black women are mistreated, right, at work. It's important to say that Taylor Townsend was doing her job, right, as a tennis player at the US Open, and how powerful it is when we stand together. So even if you don't follow the sport of tennis, stay with me, please, during this conversation, because this story is really so many of our stories. Again, the focus of my YouTube channel, why I started it, to share my journey of what I was experiencing in a toxic job, right? I never thought that it would go to what it has evolved into, being able to connect with Black women globally through the Job Liberation Virtual Summit that I co-founded with Dr. Kamani of Lifting As We Climb Consulting on YouTube. I never thought that I would see the through line globally of what we're experiencing in the workplace, which speaks to Taylor's experience at the US Open, right? These remarks being thrown at us, being questioned all the time for our abilities, for our skill sets, people being threatened by what we bring, our brilliance, right? The things that we come in with that we're often hired for become like we shift to being a threat, right? The whole concept of from pet to threat, coined by Keisha Thomas, Juanita Bailey, Dr. Keisha Thomas, Dr. Juanita Bailey. Okay, I think I'm back. Sorry, y'all, my power went out. If you're here live, can you let me know if I'm back? I think I'm back. Um, but yes. Yes, so this video is really talking about Taylor Townsend's experience at the US Open, the racism we experience at work so often as Black women, and also the power of Black women solidarity when we lock arms, right? As we've seen Naomi Osaka come out, Coco Gauff come out, and really defend Taylor Townsend based on the experience that she had with this other tennis player, right? And so it's so important to thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Um, yes, and thank you for joining, See Darling. Yes, it's so important to recognize, right, that as we are being mistreated, as we are being forced out of the workplace, it has to be said, over 300,000 Black women in the course of 3 months in the US have been forced out of jobs. It's so important for us to come together, right? So that we are not silenced because there are so many forces at play trying to silence our voices. And they're needed now more than ever as we see what's happening. It is so powerful when we stand together. Again, it stops the cycle of self gaslighting that can start when we are in these workplaces, when we are in these environments, and no one stands up and says, yo, that's wrong. Like, why are you speaking to her like that? A lot of us don't have that experience where someone has intervened, right? And so it can go down a process like a shame spiral. And you can feel like you're the only one that has experienced this. It was your fault, right? That's where depression often starts. I know that was the case for me, being diagnosed, right, with a depressive disorder in the job that I was in, because no one really stood up in a way that they should have. And that creates a level of trauma that is so deep when no one stands up, right? But we have the power to stand together and stand up for each other. It's important. So at the US Open, Taylor Townsend, a Black American tennis player, was playing against Jelena Ostapenko, a former French Open champion. And I have the article here if y'all want to read that too. Let me link it in the chat. It's also in the description section. So Taylor won the match in straight sets. And again, I'm not an expert in tennis, so if I get any of these terms wrong, bear with me, y'all. But 7-5, right? In 6-1, she outplayed her. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate this. Happy Friday. Thank you for joining. Right? It has to be said, she outplayed her. Taylor outplayed her, right? And I really don't want to mention her name because I'm not trying to talk about her, the other player. But she outplayed her, right? Again, the same theme that we see happening in the workplace over and over again. Her brilliance, her skill, her talent, her gift, right? That led her to win this match. What did that do that triggered this other player? Right? Normally at the end of a tennis match, we see typically players walk to the net, shake hands, maybe give a quick nod of respect. But this time, instead of a handshake, Ostapenko confronted Taylor. She looked at her and said, "You're uneducated. You have no class." And she also said something that I perceived as a threat. "See what happens when we get outside the U.S." So that's what happened to Taylor Townsend, right, during this match. The other player looked at her and said, "You're uneducated," after she won the match. "You have no class. See what happens when we get outside the U.S." Okay. So that's what we're dealing with. And as people have shared with me who are still in traditional workplaces, as many of you know, I made the transition out of the workplace, out of a corporate environment into freelancing, digital entrepreneurship, little over 2 years ago at this point. And it has truly been healing for my self-esteem. It has allowed me to reclaim my voice, which I'm sure you can see if you visit the journey of my YouTube channel when I first started, because I've actually been watching my past videos too, versus where I am now, right? And a lot of this has to do with the type of environment that we're in. We are so brilliant, we are so skilled, we are so gifted, right? And that triggers people to no end. And so what do? They try to take away, extract our power, chip away at our self-esteem, right? So that the skills, the talents, the gifts that we came in with, now all of a sudden we're questioning them. This is very intentional, right? This is not an oversight. This is not unconscious bias. This is intentional harm and mistreatment, often levied directly at Black women. And it has to be said. And if you are interested in growing your online brand, I do want to say this too. I'm co-hosting an upcoming workshop / masterclass with my friend Rushni, aka Glamazini, on the 13th that you can register for here. It's also in the description, scrolling on the screen. But if you're interested in transitioning on your timeline, right? Because there is no pressure, whatever works for you, but to grow your online brand, to be able to, I think it's really important to reclaim your story in your narrative in whatever way that looks like for you. And that's how you can, as an entrepreneur, digital entrepreneur, freelancer, that's how you draw your clients in. As we spoke about, Rushy and I spoke about earlier this week, authenticity really unlocks so many things. But what can we not do in these work environments? Be authentic, right? Because what happens when we are authentic? Then we're harmed, right? Then people try to break us down, right? When we come in with this level of confidence and self-assuredness, that triggers people, right? The same thing that we see happening here. And so getting back to the topic, these words were not about tennis, right? Again, the other tennis player looked at Taylor Townsend and said, "You're uneducated, you have no class. See what happens when we get outside the US," right? They're not random. Again, it's not unconscious bias. When a white player says that to a Black woman in a majority white sport, those insults tap directly into racist stereotypes that have been weaponized against us for centuries. Right? So this is not small. This is not an oversight. And I saw a little bit of the other player's response, right? I think she said something to the lines of, to the effect of like she's never been racist in her life. Huh? That's funny, right? Because you're so easily able to levy these insults at a Black woman who is your opponent who won over you, right? Due to her skill, due to her gifts, due to her talent that she brought into the match. So uneducated is a way of saying you don't belong here, right? The message that we often receive in work environments that are toxic and traumatic, you don't have the intelligence or the worth to stand next to me. Again, when she just defeated her. She just defeated her in this match. But her insult is you're uneducated, you have no class. And this like perfectly illustrates the mind warp of oppression, which is so important to pay attention to if you're experiencing this in the workplace. They will levy these insults at us that are actually the opposite of what we're doing, right? So we're coming in with the skills, with the gifts, with the brilliance. The insult will be, you're not skilled. It's the opposite, right? You're not skilled. You're not brilliant. You're taking up too much space. You're intimidating people, right? The word that they like to use of Black women so often in the workplace. And so if you can see the game that is at play, and believe me, they do view it as a game. I've seen it up close. You can kind of get ahead, right? And you can also shield yourself from the harm of the words that they're saying to you, right? No, I don't have to take that in because I know the game that you're trying to play. I know that you're trying to break my self-esteem. You're trying to make me question my worth because my brilliance triggers you, right? But that's not my problem. That's not my problem. No class, right, is a way of demeaning Taylor's dignity. These are not neutral words. They are loaded, right, and rooted in anti-Blackness. So getting to Taylor's response, right, Taylor didn't take the bait. She held her head high, right? She walked away and she did a press conference later where she spoke about it. She said she was proud of how she handled the situation, right? But the truth is she should never have had to endure those words, that mistreatment, that harm in her place of work, right? Which is a tennis court. She's a tennis player. We shouldn't have to perform grace in the face of disrespect, right? That should not be something that's put onto us, right? But that is. And so, yes, if you're here live, happy Friday. Thank you for joining. So this topic is covering what happened to Taylor Townsend at the U.S. Open, the racism that Black women experience in the workplace, and the power also of Black women's solidarity when we come together, as we've seen Naomi Osaka, Coco Gauff come out and speak out against what happened to Taylor at the U.S. Open. So I'm going to link the article here in the chat, also in the description section, if you're watching the replay, if you like to check it out. But yeah. And so speaking about the importance of solidarity, right? It's so important. Other Black women players refused to let Taylor stand alone in that moment. Again, part of the trauma, the heartache, the spiral that happens to us when we have been traumatized is that no one stands up. No one says, that was wrong. Right? Why did you just say this to her? Why did you just do this to her? And it's so important for us to be in solidarity with each other, right? Because so often we're the only one that, unfortunately, speak up for each other. Naomi Osaka, a 4-time Grand Slam champion, said, that's one of the worst things you can say to a Black player in a majority white sport. Taylor is one of the most intelligent, kind people I know. Those comments were unacceptable. Right? So we see Naomi coming out. Hold on one second. Coco Gauff, the current U.S. Open champion. And again, speaking to my the video that I did earlier this week on cooperative economics and my chat with Rushni Cope, who I'll be co-hosting from Passion to Profit with. on the 13th. If you'd like to register, link in the description. But it's very important that we resist competition, right? Because people love to see us in competition. And again, Coco Gauff, the current U.S. Open champion, said Taylor is one of the nicest, most respectful players out here. To call her uneducated is not only false, but deeply disrespectful. And that's what solidarity sounds like, right? Looks like saying to each other, right? Even if no one else says it, I see you, I believe you, and I'm not going to let the world minimize what happened to you. And just thinking about, right, the harm that we experience in the workplace, because that's the focus of my talks so often, but also in other environments that harm us. If someone was able to say that when we experience these things, I see you, I believe you, and I'm not going to let the world minimize what happened to you, right? Because it was wrong. The level of healing that we would be able to access if we provided that for each other. Again, we're not in control of what people external to us think about us, perceive us, but within, knowing that so many of us have had similar experiences. And I think part of the trick of hyper individualism, right? We've been told that if I speak up for this person, then what's going to happen to my position? And it becomes this really insidious like game that oppressors like to play, right? If I dangle this above this person's head, then they're not going to speak out. They're not going to speak out in support of what's happening over here. But what does that do to the person who's being harmed when no one stands up for them? When no one speaks out, right? As Naomi and Coco have done. No one says that was disrespectful. Those comments were unacceptable. That can create more harm, right? More trauma, the spiral of self-gaslighting, internalized shame. That's real. That's real, right? So too often Black women are left to fight these battles alone, whether in sports, right, tennis, at work, or in everyday life. We get told so often that we're imagining it. We're overreacting, right? We're making it a racial issue when it's not really about race. Again, gaslighting at play. But solidarity changes everything. It interrupts the gaslighting, right? It says, no, I'm not alone, right? What happened to me was real because everyone else is reflecting it back to me. I'm not imagining it. This actually did happen. These comments were rooted in anti-Blackness, 100%. So when Coco and Naomi spoke up, right, it turned the story from Taylor just being attacked, which she was, to a moment where Black women tennis players showed solidarity, collective strength. It wasn't just Taylor's fight anymore. She didn't have to do this alone. It became a fight, right? And speaking out against what Black women tennis players face, the disrespect. I just did a podcast episode highlighting the beauty of Serena Williams, and also the things, the disturbing, right, headlines that we're seeing when it comes to the pressure to lose weight, to have our bodies not change and look like a certain way based on someone else's value system. So please check that out if you're interested in that. But that's real, right? So it let us know that it wasn't just Taylor's fight, it is our fight collectively. And you see how that shifts the power dynamics. So one of the tools and tactics of oppressors is to make us feel isolated, alone, that this is the only thing happening to us, right? We're the only one experiencing this. And so by pushing back against that, solidarity, right? No, this is not just happening to her, it's happening to me too. And I'm speaking out, right? And I'm standing up in defense of her boldly. It's so important. And so words that were levied at Taylor, like uneducated and classless, don't just sting in the moment. They truly carry centuries of trauma, the way that we have been gaslit, right? Projected. Oppression has been projected on us. Thank you to Alicia Renice for that term. Oppression is projection, right? Projection is oppression. They're reminders of how Black women have been dismissed, degraded, and excluded for centuries. Solidarity doesn't erase that pain that we experience, but it transforms it. It transmutes it. It gives us space to breathe, to heal, to tell ourselves the truth, and to stand boldly because we know that we don't have to stand alone. Right? It's so important to recognize. Thank you for this comment. Yes, Dr. Chris DePedro, welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining. Taylor also faced judgment from the USTA for her body when she was a junior. Wow, it was incredibly harmful. She overcame, though, and has had a successful career. She's #1 in doubles. Thank you for sharing this. Wow. And see, I didn't even know that. For her body. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, and that ties directly into the podcast episode that I just did for my On Freedom podcast. Again, highlighting the brilliance, the beauty, the power, right, of Serena Williams, and how she has been disrespected so often. And now to hear, right, that Taylor also faced that similar experience due to her body. It's real. It's real. And it's rooted in anti-Blackness. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yep. And so just some things to reflect on as we close out today. Again, this is an impromptu live, just kind of spawned by me reading this headline, which I'll link in the chat one more time if you'd like to read the article on the power of solidarity. Things to reflect on. Have you experienced, right, someone else standing up for you when you have been harmed? And how did that change the weight of the moment or the harm that you were experiencing? And then how can you practice solidarity more intentionally, whether it's in public, right, or behind closed doors, because that's important too. Taking people to the side, right? Don't speak to her like that. Again, there's a trend that I'm noticing that I'm really so happy about. When it comes to content creation, right? So many of us are realizing that we're having to return, because none of this is new, but return to solidarity, practicing this actively, because we have been in this mind warp of hyper individualism for decades now at this point. And so how do we get back these ties, right? Looking at each other as we're in a collective struggle. I have to stand up for you, right? It's my duty, it is my responsibility as a community member to stand up and speak out when I see you being harmed, versus us just viewing ourselves, well, if I'm good, right? That's on you. If you're, which is what so many of us experience in the workplace, unfortunately. Right? I'm not willing to risk my position, my salary, right? My good standing with this person to speak out when I see you being harmed. We're having to push back against that because the situation that we're in, the systems as we see them deteriorate, it's just not an option. Right? Hyper individualism, where is that going to get us? It's so important to be in solidarity with each other. And again, resisting oppression that tells us that we're all individuals out here navigating Earth, the human experience alone. And so when something happens to me, I can't reach out to this person, right, and ask them or think that they're going to stand up for me. And how does that play right into the hands of people who want to see us constantly oppressed, right? Our voices silenced, our power stripped from us. This plays right into their hands. And we're told that hyper individualism is the only way to go. So really pushing back against these harmful notions that we're seeing. And I'm so glad that Naomi and Coco spoke out on behalf of Taylor Townsend and what she experienced at the U.S. Open. If you're just joining us, her opponent, right? Taylor's opponent said to her, "You're uneducated. You have no class." And then she also said, "See what happens when we get outside the U.S." Right? So yes, those words that Taylor received were meant to cut her down, were meant to sting, right? Really affect her. They were meant to, absolutely. But because Naomi and Coco stood with her, right, as we see them speaking out, Taylor did not have to be alone in what she was battling and speaking out against the disrespect she experienced. When we stand together, disrespect cannot win, right? Ultimately, we prevail because we're standing together and we're speaking out on behalf of each other, even if it doesn't impact us at the moment. Getting out of the individualistic mindset, right? If it doesn't impact me, I don't need to worry about it. Okay? Getting out of that and really back into the collective way of viewing liberation and solidarity is so important. Right? Solidarity truly can shield us, it can protect us, our psyches, our well being in these times that we find ourselves in that are highly chaotic, distractions everywhere left and right. So, rooting ourselves in solidarity, in our collective liberation, safety, and well being versus what we often experience in messaging that we're all just out for ourselves. Rugged individualism is something I'll be speaking more about. Rushing mentioned that during our chat on Tuesday on my channel. It's so important, right? One of the values, especially coming from the US, of rugged individualism. How is that going to play out when we see what's happening to us collectively? Being pushed out, forced out of the workplace, the economy, right, and how it's impacting us. It just can't be, right? And so it's important to sit with some of these questions that I posed during this live. I want to thank y'all so much for being here on this Friday. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for watching. If this resonated, please feel free to like this video so let's share it with other people. Comment below if you're watching the replay. I appreciate y'all who are here in the live chat as well. I linked the article that I saw in the description as well as in the chat. Again, if you would like to join us for From Passion to Profit, How to Build Your Online Brand to Generate Income from Anywhere. It's happening Saturday, September 13th, 12 p.m. Eastern. I'll be co-hosting it with Rushni Cope, aka Glamazini, as both of us have taken our healing journeys and built brands online, right, to generate income. So both of us have done this. I'll be talking about how to create a sales funnel, simple starter sales funnel. Rushing will be talking about how to build, right, your brand, attract your audience using your authenticity. And so please register at the link scrolling on the screen, and I'll put it in the chat one more time, also in the description section. Yes, but I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you watching. Know that solidarity is so important. It's crucial going forward with what we see happening. Hyper individualism has been so deeply detrimental, as I have talked about, specifically in the workplace. When we see the amount of harm that Black women are being subjected to, no one stands up. No one calls it out because everyone's afraid that their position is going to be at risk. And what does that do? That leaves so many more people open to being harmed, mistreated. And it's important we speak out in the way that you're able to. just as Naomi Osaka and Coco Gauff have done when it comes to what Taylor Townsend experienced at the U.S. Open. So I appreciate y'all so much for being here. Thank you so much for this. Your voice empowers and inspires. I appreciate this. Thank you. Yes, I hope you'll have a beautiful weekend. I will be back Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern, I think, for another chat with Rushni Cope and Dr. Kamani. So I'm excited for that. And yeah, appreciate y'all being here. Until next time, y'all. Bye. Thank you.